Sira Vale hated silence. Not the gentle kind that came after rain, or the soft kind that lived inside libraries. She hated the sharp silence that happened when a room still smelled like someone who would never walk into it again. The kind that pressed against the ears until you started to hear things that were not there, memories, regrets, and the ghost of laughter. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The day after the funeral, Sira stood in the hallway of her apartment, holding Nolan's jacket like it was a living thing. It was the brown one he wore when he wanted to look serious. Even though he never really looked serious, his eyes always gave him away. His eyes were the kind that smiled even when his mouth tried to behave. She pressed the jacket to her face and breathed in. Cedar. Mint gum. The faintest trace of motor oil, because Nolan could never stop helping people fix things. Stop, she whispered to herself, as if grief was a dog she could command. Just stop. But grief didn't listen. It lived where it wanted. Sira had met Nolan Ray on a day she hadn't wanted to be seen. She was leaving a small studio building with a folder of rejected designs tucked under her arm. Trying to keep her chin high like disappointment didn't have weight. Her phone was dead. Her bank account was tired. Her dreams felt like they were being laughed at by the city itself. She walked faster, as if speed could outrun shame. Then his voice found her. Hey, wait. Not loud. Not rude. Just a warm sound that somehow reached her like a hand. She turned, annoyed already, ready to say no before she knew the question. Nolan stood by a street vendor, holding 2 cups of ginger tea like he'd been waiting for her all his life. His hair was a little messy. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. His smile was too easy for a stranger. You dropped this, he said, lifting a small card. Sira checked her pocket. It was her last bus card. She stared at it, then at him. I didn't drop it, she said cautiously. He smiled wider. Then I'm early. I had a feeling you would. She should have walked away. Normal people walked away from men who spoke like poems. Instead, she asked, Who are you? Nolan. He held out 1 cup. Tea. Your face says you're fighting a whole war. My face says mind your business. Even better, he said, unbothered. That means you're honest. Sira took the cup because her hands were shaking, and she hated being seen like that. She took 1 sip, and it burned her throat in a way that felt like waking up. Why are you doing this? She asked. He shrugged. Because I know that look. I've worn it. And just like that, something inside her softened. Not trust. Not love. Just a small pause in her loneliness. From that day, Nolan became a quiet constant, like sunrise, like a favorite song, like the first deep breath after crying. He didn't rush her. He didn't chase her with big promises. He simply showed up, again and again, until her life started to rearrange itself around him. He sent voice notes instead of texts because he said, words should have warmth. Sometimes his voice notes were silly. Sira, I saw a dog today that looked like you when you're angry. Small, cute, ready to bite. She would roll her eyes, but she always smiled. Other times, his voice notes were gentle. Eat something, love. You can't pour from an empty cup. He called her love, the way some people said her name. As if he meant it. They fell in love in the ordinary ways. Shared meals, long walks, small arguments that ended in laughter. He learned how she liked her eggs. She learned he hummed when he was nervous. He hated thunderstorms. She hated goodbyes. One night, after they'd been together nearly a year, Sira asked him the question she'd been afraid to ask. What are we doing, Nolan? He was sitting on her floor, fixing a loose drawer handle like he always did, repairing things that weren't his responsibility. He looked up. His eyes were serious for once. We're building, he said. Building what? A life, he answered. The kind where you don't have to be brave every day. Sira's throat tightened. I don't know how to do that. I do, he said softly. And I'll teach you. If you let me. She let him. Months later, he took her to the sea at dawn and asked her to marry him with trembling hands and a ring he'd saved for in secret. Sira cried so hard she could barely say yes. In the months that followed, life started to glow. Sira's designs got noticed. Nolan's mechanic shop became popular because he treated people like family and refused to cheat them. They rented a bigger place. They argued about paint colors. They danced in the kitchen when the radio played old love songs. One evening, Sira recorded him without him knowing. He was washing plates, singing off-key, moving his hips like he was entertaining a private audience. She laughed. What? He asked, looking over his shoulder. You're ridiculous. I'm happy, he corrected, splashing her with water. She screamed and chased him down the hallway, laughter sharp and bright. For a moment, the world felt harmless. Then the accident happened on a harmless day. Nolan left the house early with a kiss on her forehead. "Don't forget to eat," he said, because he never stopped mothering her. "I will," she promised. He smiled. "Liar." She threw a pillow at him. He caught it and pressed it to his chest like it was his heart. "Tonight," he said, "I'll bring that sweetbread you like. And we'll talk about the guest list again." Sarah groaned. "Not the guest list." "We have to," he teased. "Your aunt keeps adding strangers." Sarah shook her head, smiling. "Be safe." He paused at the door. His eyes held hers. "Always," he said. Then he was gone. By noon, Sarah's phone kept buzzing. A missed call from a number she didn't recognize. Then another. Then a message. "Unknown, are you Nolan Ray's family?" Her stomach dropped. Sarah called back with shaking fingers. A man answered, voice tight. "Ma'am, there's been an incident. He's been brought to." Sarah didn't remember how she got to the hospital. She remembered bright lights. The smell of antiseptic. The sound of her own breath breaking. A nurse tried to guide her. "Please calm down." "My fiancé," Sarah choked. "Where is he?" They took her into a small waiting room with walls too white to be kind. A doctor came out. His face was careful. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell. "Is he okay?" she asked, already knowing the answer because life always tells you before words do. The doctor swallowed. "We did everything we could." Sarah stared at him like he was speaking another language. "No," she whispered. "No, you didn't. You don't understand, he's." "I'm sorry," the doctor said, and the words landed like stones. Sarah's knees buckled. Someone caught her. She didn't know who. All she could hear was her heart, screaming. The days after were blurry. People brought food she couldn't taste. People said, "Be strong," like strength could bring someone back. She stood beside his coffin with dry eyes and a hollow chest. She didn't cry until she got home and saw his toothbrush beside hers. That's when the grief broke open like a storm. Sarah slept in his hoodie. She kept his shoes by the door. She listened to old voice notes until her phone battery died, then charged it and did it again. Because his voice was the only place he still felt alive. And then, one night, she heard it again. Not from a voice note. Not from a memory. From her living room. Sarah sat up in bed, heart slamming. "Nolan," she whispered. There it was again. Low. Familiar. Warm. "Love, are you awake?" Sarah's blood turned cold. The sound came from the corner of the room, his old phone, the one she'd placed in a drawer because she couldn't bear to see it. She climbed out of bed, hands shaking, and opened the drawer. The screen was lit. A new notification. Scheduled voice message, deliver now. Sarah stared at it, breath locked in her chest. "How?" she whispered. Her finger hovered, then pressed play. Nolan's voice filled the room like he'd never left. "Hey, love. If you're hearing this, then something happened, and I'm not there to annoy you in person." Sarah's knees hit the floor. "Don't panic. Don't blame yourself. Just listen." And in that moment, with his voice wrapping around her like a last embrace, Sarah realized the story of their love wasn't finished. It was only changing shape. Sarah stayed on the floor for a long time, phone in her hand, as if moving would break the spell. Nolan's voice didn't sound like a recording. It sounded like him, like warmth, like stubborn love, like the way he always spoke as if the world could still be gentle. She pressed play again. "I'm sorry," Nolan said softly. "I'm sorry you're carrying this alone. If I could trade places with time, I would. But I can't. So I did the only thing I could think of." Sarah wiped her face with trembling fingers. Her cheeks were wet, and she hadn't even felt the tears start. "I scheduled these messages," he continued, "because I know you, Sarah. You go quiet when you're hurt. You pretend you're okay until you collapse in private." Sarah shook her head like he could see her. "Stop knowing me," she whispered, broken and smiling at the same time. "So, this is me showing up," his voice said. "Even when I can't." Sarah clutched the phone to her chest, as if it was his heart. The message ended with a breath, one of those little exhale laughs he always did. "Eat something, love. Please." The screen went dark. Sarah sat there until dawn bled into the curtains. Later that morning, she went to work with eyes that didn't belong to her anymore. She walked through her design studio like a ghost. Her coworker, Jessa, watched her carefully. "You look like you didn't sleep," Jessa said quietly. Sarah forced her mouth to move. "I slept." Jessa leaned in. "Do you want to talk?" Sarah almost said no. Habit, armor, pride. But then she remembered Nolan's voice. You go quiet when you're hurt. Sierra swallowed. I heard him, she said. Jessa blinked. You what? Sierra lowered her voice. His phone. There was a scheduled message. Jessa's face softened with a kind of sadness that didn't ask questions, only offered space. Oh, Sierra. For the first time since the funeral, Sierra let someone hold her. That night, another message arrived. Sierra stared at the notification for a full minute before pressing play. Her hands were shaking like she was about to touch fire. Nolan's voice came through. Okay. Second message. If you're listening, that means you made it through at least one night. I'm proud of you. Sierra's throat tightened. Don't praise me, she whispered, but the words were weak. I need you to do something for me, he said, more serious now. Open the black notebook in the top drawer. The one you always teased me about. Sierra's breath hitched. She knew that notebook. Nolan guarded it like a secret. Whenever she tried to peek, he'd snatch it away with a grin. Not for your eyes, he'd say. Now it was for her eyes. She went to the drawer and pulled it out. The cover was worn, edges bent, like it had been held during long thoughts. She opened it. Inside were pages of neat handwriting, plans, lists, sketches. But the first page made her heart stop. For Sierra, if life is cruel. She covered her mouth with her hand. The next line read, I love you more than the fear. Sierra collapsed onto the couch. On the page were instructions, gentle and organized the way Nolan always was when chaos was near. Call my lawyer, number below. Don't argue with my mother. She's grieving too, but she lashes out. Don't let anyone rush you into decisions. Check the safe under the bed. Sierra froze. Safe. Nolan had never mentioned a safe. She slid to the floor and reached under the bed. Her fingers touched metal. Her heart pounded as she dragged it out. A small safe. Heavy. She tried the code she knew, Nolan's birthday. It didn't open. She tried their anniversary. No. Her hands began to sweat. Then she remembered something he once whispered against her forehead when she was half asleep. Your favorite number is magic, he'd said. It always opens you. Sierra tried her favorite number, 17, repeated in a pattern. The safe clicked. She opened it and found a sealed envelope with her name, a small velvet pouch, a flash drive, a folded piece of paper that simply said, Play me first. Sierra unfolded the paper and saw a QR code. She scanned it with shaking hands. A video opened. Nolan's face appeared on her screen. Alive. Smiling. Eyes shining like he was about to make her laugh. Sierra's breath cracked. Hey, love, Nolan said on video, voice softer than anything. I'm recording this because sometimes I get scared. Sierra pressed a hand to her chest like she could hold her heart in place. I don't want to leave you, he said, and for the first time she saw it, fear behind his smile. But life is unpredictable. And if it ever takes me away, I need you to know something. He leaned closer to the camera. You didn't save me, he said. You didn't fix me. You didn't rescue me like a movie. His smile trembled. You simply loved me. And that changed everything. Sierra sobbed so hard her shoulders shook. I left you things, Nolan continued. Not because money replaces love, but because I know how the world treats a woman alone. I know how people can get greedy. I know how grief makes people selfish. His eyes held hers through the screen. So listen to me, he said firmly. Do not shrink. Do not disappear. Do not let your heart become a prison. Sierra whispered, I can't. Nolan smiled gently. Yes, you can. You're stronger than the day you met me. Because you let yourself be loved. That's strength too. The video ended with him blowing a kiss. Sierra sat in the dark, shattered and held at the same time. Then the envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter in his handwriting. Love. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I hate that. I hate leaving you with unfinished dreams. But I'm still with you in every way that matters. I want you to do one thing, live. Not survive. Not endure. Live. Wear the dress you keep saving. Take the trip we postponed. Laugh without apologizing. Love again if your heart ever wants to. I won't be angry. I'll be grateful, because it means you didn't let pain steal your future. And one more thing, there's someone involved in the accident. It wasn't random. Please talk to my lawyer. Don't face it alone. Forever your Nolan. Sierra read that last line again. Forever your Nolan. Her tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. The next days became a different kind of grief with purpose. She met the lawyer, a calm woman named Vara, who spoke gently but didn't sugarcoat anything. The investigation suggests negligence, Vara said. A truck with faulty brakes. There were warnings. Sira's hands clenched. So he died because someone ignored warnings? Vara nodded. We'll pursue it. Sira left the office feeling something she hadn't felt since the hospital. Anger. Not wild anger, sharp, focused anger. Nolan had always fixed things. Now she would fix this. But grief still hit her in waves. She'd hear a song and crumble. She'd walk past his shop and freeze. She'd smell mint gum and lose her breath. And then, like clockwork, another voice message would arrive. Hey love, if you're listening, you probably forgot to drink water again. He kept showing up in small ways, pulling her back from the edge. One evening, Sira sat on the balcony with Jessa, watching city lights blink. You're different, Jessa said. Sira stared at the sky. I'm not. You are, Jessa insisted. You're still broken, but you're moving. Sira swallowed. He won't let me stop. Jessa nodded, tears in her own eyes. That's love. Sira looked down at her phone. No new message yet. And for the first time, she felt afraid of the day the messages would stop. Because what happens when the last hey, love finally comes? The last message arrived on a quiet Sunday. Sira was making tea, ginger tea, the kind that burned like truth, when her phone vibrated on the counter. Her breath caught the moment she saw the notification. Scheduled voice message, final delivery. Her hands went cold. She stared at the screen for a long time, as if refusing to play it could keep Nolan's voice alive forever. Jessa was there, sitting at the table, watching Sira's face change. That one looks different, Jessa said softly. Sira swallowed. It says final. Jessa stood up slowly. Do you want me to stay? Sira nodded. Jessa moved closer, not touching Sira yet, giving her room to decide. That was Jessa's gift, she never crowded pain. Sira pressed play. Nolan's voice filled the kitchen one last time. Hey love. Sira's knees weakened. She gripped the counter. If this is the last one, it means time has moved. And I'm glad. Because time moving means you're still here. Her throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. I'm not going to say the usual things, Nolan continued, voice gentle. Because you already know them. You know I love you. You know I'm proud of you. You know you didn't fail me by not saving me. Sira shook her head, tears falling fast. Today, I want to talk about the part you won't want to hear. Jessa's eyes filled with tears too. You're going to hear my voice in places that hurt, Nolan said. In songs. In crowds. In quiet rooms. You'll turn your head, hoping I'm there. And you'll hate the world for playing tricks on you. Sira covered her mouth. But listen, he said, voice firmer now, the way he sounded when he wanted her to believe him. My voice isn't a trap. It's a bridge. Sira sobbed. When you hear me, don't run from it. Let it pass through you. Let it remind you that what we had was real. That you were loved well. There was a pause, his breath, like he was gathering courage. Sira, he whispered, and the way he said her name broke her completely. Promise me something. Promise me you will not make my death the center of your life. Sira choked. I can't promise. Yes, you can, his recorded voice insisted softly. Because you're not meant to be a monument for my memory. You're meant to be a woman with a future. Sira slid down to the floor, phone pressed to her ear. I know you, Nolan said again, quieter now. You'll keep my jacket. You'll keep my ring. You'll keep the teacups. And that's okay. A small laugh in his voice. But one day, you'll laugh again without feeling guilty. One day, you'll dance in the kitchen again. One day, you'll look in the mirror and see a woman who survived the hardest thing, and still chose softness. Sira squeezed her eyes shut. If love ever finds you again, he said, voice trembling slightly, don't punish it for my absence. Don't shut the door just to prove you're loyal. Loyalty isn't loneliness. Jessa's tears fell freely now. Nolan exhaled. And if it never finds you again, that's okay too, he added. Just don't stop living. That's all I ever wanted. A living Sira. A full Sira. A Sira who eats breakfast and buys the dress and takes the trip and tells the truth when she's hurting. His voice softened into something almost like a lullaby. I'm going to go now, he whispered. Not because I want to, but because you have to keep walking without needing my voice to carry you. A pause. Thank you, he said. For choosing me. For seeing me. For loving me back. Sira's chest heaved. And hey, he added, trying to sound playful through the ache. If you ever doubt you mattered, remember this. I recorded all of this because you were the best part of my life. The message ended. The kitchen became silent again. Sira sat on the floor, shaking, like someone who had just survived a storm. Jessa knelt beside her and finally wrapped her arms around her. Syrah leaned into her, crying like a child, like a woman, like a heart that had been loved and then broken open. When her breathing calmed, Syrah whispered, "It's over." Jessa stroked her hair. "No," she said gently. "It's not over. It's just different." Syrah stared at the phone in her hand. "What do I do now?" she asked, voice small. Jessa's eyes were red. "You do what he asked. You live." It didn't happen overnight. Healing never did. But Syrah started, slowly, stubbornly, like someone learning to walk again. She reopened her design business fully. She took on bigger clients. She stopped apologizing for her ambition. She pursued the case with Vara until the company responsible was held accountable. And when the settlement money came, she didn't spend it on distractions. She built a small community workshop for young creatives who couldn't afford resources. A place with tools, training, and a quiet corner for tea. She named it Ray House. On opening day, the sun was bright like hope had decided to show up early. People filled the space. Laughter echoed off the walls. Music played softly. Someone spilled tea, and everyone laughed instead of panicking. Syrah stood near the front, looking around like she couldn't believe this was real. And then softly she heard it. Not from her phone. Not from a recording. From inside her. Nolan's voice, remembered so vividly it almost felt new. "We're building." Syrah closed her eyes. She didn't crumble. She smiled, small, trembling, real. "Yeah," she whispered. "We are." That night, alone in her apartment, she opened a drawer and took out the old brown jacket. She pressed it to her face and breathed in what was left of him. "I miss you," she said aloud. The room didn't answer. But her heart did. Because love, even when it hurts, leaves a person changed. Not ruined. Changed. Syrah placed the jacket back carefully and stood tall. She walked to the mirror and looked at herself, the woman who had loved deeply, lost brutally, and still chose to keep going. And in the quiet, she spoke the words that used to terrify her. "Goodbye, Nolan." Then, because she knew he would hate a dramatic ending, she laughed through her tears and added, "And yes, I ate today." In the morning, she would wake up and build again. Because heartbreak didn't end her. It only proved she had been real. And somewhere, in every warm memory and every sudden wave of grief, his voice would always be there. Not to trap her in sorrow, but to remind her that she had been loved well. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from.